Hello. So, I want you to think about an app that you love. Maybe it's the first thing you check when you wake up in the morning. It could be the last thing you look at right before you go to bed. And I want you to think about the impact that this app has on your life. What service does it render for you? How does it affect your decisions? We're really lucky here because most of the apps we use, if not all of them, are designed for us, a very narrow audience in the true perspective of everything. But I want to ask, what if apps could be made more accessible for more kinds of people, for a global audience, especially people whose phones depend on those really slow networks? I recently took an internship in New York City at a design firm called Chermayeff, Geismar, and Haviv. They've done some iconic work in the graphic design industry, and I'm sure you recognize some, if not all of these marks that they've all created. As the intern designing for them, I was given one of the most awesome projects I've ever worked on, and that was to create an app, which was awesome. But the challenge came when they told me that the app I was designing for would be used primarily in India. Now, this was challenging to me because, well, I've never been to India, but then more importantly, I didn't know anything about Indian mobile phone usage. I didn't know what kinds of phones they used, how they consumed apps, what apps they used, if the apps we used were even accessible to an audience like them. So like any design project or creative project, I started with research. And through my research, I discovered something. Phones used in India span a wider range of connectivity than the phones we use here. So yes, they may use phones like the iPhone or Android or even the latest Google Pixel, but here are some of the phones that are most commonly used in India. And as you can see across the board, we have phones that connect to 2G networks, 3G networks, 4G networks, and that G stands for generation. And the higher the number next to the number, the higher the connectivity and the cellular service. So as the app designer, I had to realize that the app I was creating needed to work for all of these devices, not just one of them. And you may be thinking, well, how bad is it to leave out just, let's say, the 2G network users? But here's a stat for you. 80% of all people who rely on data in India rely on a 2G network. 80%. So the app I was creating, 80% of its audience would be using a 2G smartphone. So inclusivity was key here. I had to design for all users, not just some. And this may make sense to you. I mean, I'm explaining it pretty well, but the way app designers work today, the way app teams work on apps today, is really different. App designers usually take the fastest, the latest, the newest technology and design one version of an app simply for that market. But you're leaving out everyone else, right? You see, when we design technology for a narrow group of users, people who don't have that newest technology, they're the ones to lose out. People who consume these apps often live in poorer or rural areas. If they're fortunate enough to own a phone, a slow connectivity phone is the best they can do based off how much money they have and what's available to them in their area. So I want to go back to that 80% statistic. 80% of people who rely on smartphone data rely on that 2G network, right? Well, look, rely could mean one of two things. First, it could mean that their phone's maximum connection strength is a 2G connection. Or it could mean that their phone connects to a higher network, but that network just isn't available to them in their area. So this is where I see a problem, and I think some of you may see it too. Someone's ability to use an app shouldn't be based off something that's completely out of their control. And I think I have a solution for this. Can we just take a second and get these slides right? Okay, Sorry about that, back. So my solution is this. What if we could create flexible apps? Apps that could grow or shrink to satisfy whatever device it was on. Bridge this global network. And first things first, we would identify the core. So I want you to think about that app that you thought of. What's the core function of this app? What's its primary service? What service does it render for its users? So let's take Uber, for example. How many of us know of the service Uber? So Uber or Lyft, this is a ride-sharing app that connects drivers with people who use the app. That's its primary service. That's that core functionality. The next thing we have to do is think about the technological barriers we have to overcome in order to make this app more accessible. So Uber hinges on 3 things. First is current location. Where are you located? Second is the ability to receive and send messages. That's paramount for an app like Uber. And then third, you guessed it, is a payment method. There has to be some way to compensate the drivers. And fortunately, 2G phones have all of these capabilities. So, if a core service works on a 2G device, that becomes the foundation for which an app designer can work upon and build additional secondary features for those higher-end 3G, 4G phones. Again, as you can see here, that core functionality remains the same. Whether it be a least capable device, a more capable device, you're always going to have that core functionality. So let's continue with the ride-sharing, that Uber app example, and see how this could work in a case study. So what would this look like? Well, I've designed it here. This is what a ride-sharing service app could look like on a 2G phone, that least capable device. So you can see, we have a field that says where we're going to. We have where we're coming from, which is currently populating it with your current location. And then we have other things like a payment method, ride history, settings at the bottom. So apps should be responsive, right? They should grow and expand to whatever device they're on. So this is that least capable device. Let's see how this could transform into a somewhat capable device. So we're looking now at 3G networks. So here, this is what that app could look like on a 3G network, a slightly better phone. 3G phones can load graphics and images without dramatically reducing the experience of using the actual app. So here we're introducing icons, profile pictures, and these are all enhancements that help the experience of using the app, but by no means do they make it, right? So let's take a look at the 4G phone. Now this is a phone that you or I may have the most access to. It may work for our devices. So you can see here that we're bringing in all the bells and whistles. We're adding maps with live GPS tracking. We have traffic and weather integration. Now, these are all features that enhance your experience, but by no means do they make it. And here you can see, on this scale, the apps that you witnessed. We started with that core functionality at the lowest capable device, and then we grew it. We expanded it for the more capable devices. So I want to conclude with this. Let's go back to that beginning question. What's that app that you love? What's that app that you use every day? Could you extrapolate the core of that, the idea of that, the primary function that app provides for its users? What is that service? And then secondly, we have to think about those core functionalities and how they could work on the lowest end device. Not the highest end as being done now, but the lowest end device. What technological barriers do you have to overcome? Is it current location? Is it being able to receive or send a message? Technology will always be moving forward. There's no stopping that. But we must face the reality that not everyone in the world is an ideal 4G user. Now, it'd be great if everyone had the newest and latest, fastest, capable device, but that's simply not the reality. And as designers, we must design for that reality. So I want you to imagine for a second. Imagine how people's lives could change if we could bring them apps that worked on their own technology. Imagine how a society could reform, how it could reshape into something new, thriving on apps that provide them amazing services. See, we both have the upper hand and the privilege right now to provide these tools to help others create real change in their lives. So therefore, this is not just an opportunity, but it's our responsibility to extend what we have for the needs of others. Thank you so much.